Right. Well, I hope that everybody can hear me. It's really strange doing it like this because I can't see anyone's faces. So I'm just going to hope that Laura's going to tell me if you can't hear me. So yeah, I'm going to just talk really briefly actually about kind of career pathways in dentistry, and then just talk about the journey that I took to end up in the military. And I've kind of come full circle now, and I've gone back into working in the dental hospital actually. So I'll be mainly focusing on the military aspect, and I hope you'll find it interesting. So I took this photo when I was an undergraduate, and this is looking across at some old halls of residence here. So you can see in the foreground Richardson Road, and then behind that Castle Leazes, and then behind that Leazes Parade. So this is all loads of student accommodation. And I popped this in because I just wanted to remind myself to explain that your career kind of starts as an undergraduate. So you have opportunities to do an intercalated year where you can do a research degree, you can do research projects, and you can go on electives, as a medical or dental undergraduate. So what I did was I went to Australia and did some further training in forensic dentistry, just because it was something that interested me. So there's all kinds of opportunities that you can have as an undergraduate. And if you're thinking of applying to medical or dental school, and you're going to go for an interview, they are the kinds of things that you kind of want to think about. So this is actually a really complex slide, but it's massively simplified on what actually looks like a London Underground map. So the career pathway in dentistry is horrendously complex, and I would doubt it's much better in medicine. And I don't think at your stage you need to think about it too much. But essentially, in dentistry, when you graduate, most people don't just go into practice. You can either do a year's foundation dentistry, where you kind of learn how to work in the NHS and get a bit more tutoring, or you can do a 2-year program, which is what I did, which is the one on the right-hand side. And that gives you kind of split time between a bit of specialist training in hospital and a bit of time in primary care as well. After finishing that, I didn't really know which way to go. So you would traditionally have either gone into practice, or you would have gone carried on your specialist training in the hospital. I didn't really want to go into practice because what people don't explain to you when you apply to medical or dental school is that when you treatment plan for patients, that you have to take into account the financial aspects. So I know that GPs will be aware of this. You can't just offer everyone that walks through the door an MRI scan. And in dentistry, I think it's worse because unlike medicine, in dentistry, the patients are actually paying cash for their treatment. So you'll very often get a patient turn around and say they can't afford to have the root canal treatment. They're going to have the tooth extracted. And I hated treatment planning based on what the patients could afford. And so I realized there was another option, which was the military. And in the military, what we strived for was just doing the gold standard treatment. So the patients don't pay for anything and they can pretty much have whatever they want. And I just thought it was a great way to work. The other thing that was going on, because it was around 2006 that I started looking into it, there was a lot of unrest in the Middle East. So obviously Osama bin Laden on the left and Saddam Hussein on the right there. So there was a lot of stuff going on. I knew that if I joined, that I'd end up probably going out to one of these countries. And I just kind of thought I was young and I'd give it a go and have a bit of an adventure, really. When I was an undergraduate, I didn't even think about it. So it's a really embarrassing picture, this. That's me on the left, the ginger one, doing a bit of a James Bond thing. And I really wouldn't have thought it would turn into this equally embarrassing Charlie's Angel-esque picture. But actually, I ended up having a fantastic time in the military. I'm going to just talk briefly about why we have dentists in the military and why it's important. And this will translate across to medicine as well. Facial pain is actually the worst pain that people can get. So it tends to have a more emotional component. It drains you a lot more, and it is also a higher level of pain. It tends to induce fear in people. So if people have a severe toothache, it tends to just affect everything. They generally cannot function. And if you think about that in the context of the military, it's just not what you want. Now, they didn't realize that. So this is obviously in the 18th, 19th century. We did know dentistry was important, but it was actually so that people had teeth so they could bite the bullet. So they had to bite into this paper bullet, release the gunpowder, and then they pop the bullet down into the rifle of the musket of the rifle. So we knew dentistry was important, but it wasn't thinking about the pain. Now, really, dentistry doesn't get mentioned at all until the Second Boer War. And what happened here was there were about 44,000 soldiers killed, of which about 30,000 were due to disease and non-battle injury. And disease and non-battle injury, be it medical or dental, tends to affect a lot more people than actual war injuries. It always has. 5,000 of those were rendered unable to fight due to dental disease, which is quite unbelievable. And 2,000 people were actually evacuated back to the UK. So you can start to understand why it's important. So here, we have basically the birth of military dentistry during World War I and II. During World War I, not a single dentist deployed, despite our experiences in the Second Boer War. However, when we came to World War II, there was an incident that happened, and it was just that one incident that sparked a change. So this is Field Marshal Haig, or Sir Douglas Haig, and he was the commander of the First Army over in France. And it was very near the start of the war, actually. He developed severe toothache, and he asked for a dentist, and he was absolutely appalled to find that no one could treat him. There were no dentists that had deployed. So he was actually taken out of the battle through severe toothache. And he made a very angry phone call back to London, and within a month, he'd had 12 dentists deployed. They were given like a temporary commission, if you like, into the Royal Army Medical Corps. There was no dental corps. By the end of the war, there were 850 dentists serving. So that's how important they were. We don't have any records for what the British dentists did, but we know the Australian dentists alone, they extracted over 300,000 teeth from over 1 million soldiers. So you can imagine the positive impact that they're having. If I said to you, people can't function if they're in pain, and we can alleviate that pain, then the strengthening of the fighting force can be massive. So this was recognised in 1921. We had the Army Dental Corps formed. So we can see the ADC in the cap badge there, and this is what we have on our berets. And it really became an absolute beast throughout the Second World War. So we had mobile dental units where people could perform dental surgery. These are like little mobile dental surgeries that are driving around France, basically. And before deploying, dentists were actually given training in general anaesthetic, maxillofacial surgery, making dentures, and that's all part of the pre-deployment that we would do today if we go away anywhere. I've put this in because this is my wife's granddad getting off the boat in Italy. He was actually shot twice, and one of those incidents was in the back of the neck, and the bullet passed through and shattered his jaw. And it was actually a dentist that operated on him and put him back together. And that just, to me, it just emphasizes the really wide roles that we have when we go out to war, because you often don't have the plastic surgeons and the general surgeons to do anything. So it was very much a case of mucking in and doing what you could. And the dentists actually did a really good job. In medicine and dentistry, there were some amazing surgical techniques that came out of the war. So these are gentlemen in the self-named Guinea Pig Club. And these are airmen that have been shot. They had terrible burns. And it was a surgeon called Mackindo that actually pioneered some of these techniques. So these have all got what we call pedicle flaps attached to their face, where they've had a skin graft lifted with its blood supply attached to the face for a few weeks, and then you can cut the blood supply off. And this was absolutely pioneering surgery at the time. And these are the kinds of techniques that we still use in medicine today. And those are the kinds of things that come out of a war. And this is a quick picture of the last meeting of the Guinea Pig Club. They met every year up until 2007, which I think is a really nice story. So then we really did get recognised as being important, and we got our own royal prefix. So it became the Royal Army Dental Corps in 1946. So what do you want to do? If you want to become an army medic or dentist, you basically have to go to Sandhurst, which wasn't really my cup of tea, but you don't have to do the full 9 months. It's just a shortened 3-month course, really, to give you the basics. I thought the fitness side of it was fine because I quite like my fitness. I hated the cold. I hated lack of sleep and going out on exercise. But we were there with, it was doctors, dentists, it was vets and lawyers. It was really, really not too bad, actually. And then I got my first posting. This is a picture of me in the Mourne Mountains. I was posted to Dental Centre Hollywood, which is it's not the Hollywood Hills. It's the Hollywood in Northern Ireland. And that I kind of started to realise there how important dentists were in the army, because I hadn't quite got it at this point. And it was really drilled into me that I had to get the guys dentally fit. So this is a picture that I took just before I went to Afghanistan. And this is a bunch of lucky people coming home. But everyone that I was sat with would have had to be signed off as dentally fit. We've all gone through the same process. So, and the importance of that is, if you are not signed off as dentally fit, you're several times more likely to become a dental casualty when you're out on tour. And even people that were signed off fit, in a 1-year period, we had over 4,000 dental casualties in Afghanistan. So, and that's when people go fit. So can you imagine the impact if they were just allowed to go without having their teeth sorted first? Before I went anywhere, I did loads of pre-deployment training. So I've mentioned we did, attachments in oral surgery. We did courses in denture making, and we got to play with the kit. We did a big exercise in the hospital, and actually we have to work within the hospital team. So they would have scenarios where patients would come in having leg trauma, having stood on a bomb, and they might have facial injuries, and then they would come and get the dental team, and we'd come in and have to do like a mock operation. So it was really preparing us to get there, because we knew we'd have to get there and hit the ground running. We did loads of military training as well, so we had to sharpen up on all our skills we'd learned at Sandhurst. This is my nurse Keith with the teeth. So we did loads of fitness training, learning about the law of armed conflict. We did obviously our shooting skills. And then when we got out there, that kind of continued. We did several days really of live fire exercises, which I didn't think as a dentist I'd ever need to do really, but they had us driving around on top of snatched Land Rovers, firing at things in the desert. And it was quite good fun, actually. We also had to practice with kind of these metal detectors called a vallum. And if we ever in a vehicle that broke down, you'd have to sort of create a safe path, because the biggest risk out there were the improvised explosive devices. So you just have to use these to get to a safe point. So we had to have training in that. Quite a lot of my time was spent in the hospital. And actually the dental department it's wrong, because on this picture it's on the green bit at the top, but it actually moved over to the dotted lines on the right hand side, which was absolutely the right place for it, because it meant whenever there was a trauma, we could go down and get involved early on. And likewise, if it was a minor trauma that came into A&E, they would just send them to the dental centre. If it just needed some stitches or something, then we could do that for them. So this is primary, in inverted brackets. This is primary dental care, because actually it was anything but. It was really, really interesting in thinking on your feet. Now you can see the kit that we've got here. We can pretty much, it looks like a really basic dental surgery, and we can do anything in this. We've got an X-ray machine there on the left, so we could do root canal treatment if we wanted to. We could do anything. So it was a really good setup. This is actually a second tour that I went out on, and at this point, they've actually made basically something that you'd be proud to have this in the UK. It's got a separate room for its disinfection. It had 2 surgeries. It was really quite state of the art. This is the same, exactly the same setup, but in a tent. This is on an exercise I went out to in Kenya. And it just shows you, I mean, we banged this into helicopters and all sorts and took it all over, and it's really robust kit. It's not without its problems. That was a time where it flooded, and that's where I learned you have to lift things up. So constantly kind of adapting and overcoming. I'll just run through a few examples of the kinds of things we used to have day in, day out. This is a typical chap that's fallen over. This is a crown, a false tooth, and he's banged it, and basically it's split off at gum level. So we can go ahead, and I've taken the nerve out of the tooth. Now, that's fine in the UK, but when you're in the middle of Afghanistan and you've taken a tooth out like that at the front, the problem is the teeth either side try and move, so they close into the gap. So then you need to think, how am I going to manage this? And what I actually did was I did a root canal treatment, and then I put a fence post basically down into the root canal, and then I turned the crown that had come off into a post-retained crown. And so it's just constantly thinking outside the box and situations you wouldn't come across back in the UK. This is an example of a guy with a necrotizing gingivitis. So this is where your gum inflammation goes bad and it starts eating away at your gums. This is actually was called trench mouth back in World War I. And it's very debilitating, and it's similar kind of thing to trench foot really. And it's just due to not looking after your teeth. And being a bit malnourished, possibly smoking, and you'll find soldiers are doing all of that when they're on tour. So we tended to see a lot of that. Here's a chap that came in with a loose implant. I knew very little about implants, but I knew it didn't look good on the X-ray. So I went ahead and I took a mold of his teeth, and the implant came out when I did the impression. So again, slightly sticky situation, and I actually ended up sending back to the UK that model, and I got him a denture made and then got that posted out to him. This is a chap that's just banged his head, so some very simple suturing needed, and this is just the kind of thing that there was no point having in A&E, because he would take up space that soldiers with more severe injuries might have, so he'd get sent down to us to be managed. We were never short of promoting health, so we even had health fairs out there where we'd give out toothbrushes and toothpaste, and we'd constantly bang on to the soldiers about looking after their teeth, because one of the first things that goes when they're trying to strip down the kit, get rid of weight, believe it or not, some of them don't even take a toothbrush. So we were always forcing that message home. So another thing I did out there was peripatetic clinics. So we took the dentistry on the road, and the reason for this is because if a soldier gets a problem, like a tooth problem, and they have to have some kind of dental treatment, then they would either have to be flown back to Camp Bastion, or we would have to go out to them. And actually, there's been a study done, and if we go out to them, it saves a lot of man hours, because we can actually hop from forward operating base to forward operating base and deliver a lot of dentistry that way, rather than the soldiers keep having to come back to us. So it was a really powerful and effective thing that we did. You could travel by road. I quite like these things because they're quite bomb-proof. But just to show you the kind of risk from improvised explosive devices, this is in forward operating base Oulet. And if you look at where the road curves round to the left, there's a little junction there. And that's the road coming into this forward operating base. And some cheeky Taliban people pulled up on a motorbike and buried a roadside bomb there, and it did that to one of those vehicles. So yeah, no one would have been killed in that because they are really solid. But it just shows you that was at the front gates of one of the bases. So if ever you were traveling anywhere, you know, it basically brings it home that you don't want to move soldiers around the theatre unless you absolutely have to, and you don't want it to be because of their teeth. Another way we got around was on the C-130s. These planes, this is taken up in Kabul because you can see the snow there. And that was also a really quick way to travel. And you could just pop that kit in the back, fly up, do a bit of dentistry, and then come back again. And then finally, helicopters. We did loads of traveling in the helicopters, really, really quick, really effective. A little bit hairy. They kind of tend to fly really low, or really high to try and avoid getting hit. So it was reasonably good fun. And that's it. That is the kit. That's what we tended to take with us. So we didn't bother with the X-ray machine, but with that kit, we'd go out for up to 3 weeks with that. It would be absolutely fine, and do loads of dentistry with that. This is it, just set up in one of the forward bases. So really, really basic stuff. But we could do a lot of dentistry. We wouldn't be doing our root canal type stuff in those conditions, but we certainly took a lot of teeth out. When we got to anywhere, we'd normally get looked after by the medical team. So this is in Lashkargah. These are a bunch of medics and a doctor. And it was really nice working with them. And this just shows the setup that we had in Lashkargah. This is a trauma room. So you can see they're set up for having stretchers come in when people have been badly injured. And I've got my dental kit tucked over to the left-hand side there. And, we'd set that up. But if we heard on the radio people were coming in with serious trauma, then they would get brought in, we'd pack everything away, and we'd get stuck in and help out with the trauma. And this is in the base that I've mentioned before, Fob Oulet, and this is actually a bomb-proof shelter, which I was more than happy to be in, because this place would get mortared every now and then. But yeah, kit again. No, we didn't take the chair on this one. They're just laid on like a plywood bench with some kind of bed thing on top. And it's absolutely fine. Do loads of dentistry like that. This is just to remind me that, all kinds of challenges. It was really cold out there, and overnight we found that all the water froze in the dental kit and everything. So, again, just trying to think really how to overcome those kinds of things. Another thing that we did, and certainly if you are medics and you join the military and you go out anywhere, you will definitely deal with an awful lot of trauma. So there is a slide or two in this with a bit of blood on, but I actually lifted them off the internet, I think from BBC News, because I didn't want to put any of my pictures on really to compromise myself. But so if you don't like gore, look away. But I think medical or dental, you should be okay. So this is the kind of chaotic scene that used to go on. There would be 4 of these life-saving operations going on at any one time. So there'd usually be, doing, removing arms, legs, doing thoracic surgery, heart surgery. And whilst that's going on, we'd often be extracting teeth that had been smashed or suturing faces and just really helping out where we could. As the tour went on, we tended to get more and more involved. So if a trauma did come in, they'd often come and get us and say, looks like he's got some facial injuries, can you have a look? And we found a lot of people that had been involved in a blast, very often had fractured teeth and facial injuries. So it was really good to get them operated on whilst they were having the other work done. And this was just to show, so one of my tours I did in 2009, so there were 108 killed, and for every soldier killed, there's 5 that have life-changing injuries. So there was over 500 that were having amputations, losing eyes, things like that. And that's just the British. We were also looking after the Afghans, and there were far more of them. We were looking after the Danish, the Americans, the Estonians. And I just want you to kind of imagine how busy those operating theatres were. And what it was like out there. I've put inside a short video. This was my 1 second of fame. So I'll let this play, and it just shows you the patient journey and just how amazing that hospital in Bastion was. It says Lashkargah, which is not where this was. It was in Camp Bastion.
Well, the high-tech war against the Taliban here is matched by state-of-the-art field hospitals. They operate, in all senses of the word, with military efficiency. Speed, of course, is of the essence when treating critical injuries. Our medical editor, Lawrence McGinty, has been to assess the care given to troops and examine the enormous pressures faced by the medical teams. He experienced firsthand a day in the life of a frontline ER. 9:03, and an injured British soldier arrives at Bastion Hospital. Inside the emergency department, the helicopter is. Lee has shrapnel embedded in his right arm, face and eyes. Fragments from one of the Taliban's now infamous improvised explosive devices. 909 and a portable X-ray gives instant pictures to check for fractures. Superficial fragments in the upper arm. 919 and into the CT scanner. The consultants who will operate on Lee want to know how deep the shrapnel is. Things happen incredibly fast at the hospital in Camp Bastion. Patients can be here in the operating theatre within 30 minutes of being wheeled through the front door. 4 consultant doctors operated on Lee, scrupulously picking out the shrapnel. That number of consultants would be unheard of in a hospital back home. There's even a dentist who had to extract 2 teeth.
Yeah, so you can see there it's just that just wouldn't happen in the UK. You wouldn't be getting your CT scan within a few minutes of arriving. You wouldn't be on the operating theatre, 20, 30 minutes later. It was a really phenomenal place to work, actually. So I've alluded to my interest in forensics. So this is something I'm still actively involved with for the military. So obviously very sad, but not everybody survived. I came to forensics in the military towards the end of Operation Herrick out in Afghanistan, but I know that the team that they did have to deal with people who had been killed out there. One of the reasons for that is because if people have had facial injuries, you can't really rely on that for an identification. So having a dental identification is just an absolute certain way to kind of decide, that definitely is that person. So there's just a picture of me at work there. So this is the kind of thing we do. And what we do is we just compare the after death records to the before death records. And we just make a decision on it's definitely that person, or it could be that person, or it's definitely not that person. Or we may say, there's not enough information. And there have been times where I've had to do it's definitely not decision, where, the police are pretty sure that it is that person. And you've had to turn around and say, I can absolutely categorically say it's not. And it might just be due to one tooth. But if it's unexplainable, if a patient's had that tooth extracted and it's present in their mouth, then it clearly can't be that person. So there's some big legal decisions that you have to make, and it's a really interesting thing to do. This is the kind of report I would make. So this is someone who died in a fire, and this is just on the left, the before death records, and on the right, the after death. You can see on the right, they've actually lost a tooth, but that's explainable because they could have had that extracted. But what is remaining, there's enough information, I'm happy to say that is that person. And then just a quick note, this is actually the prison out in Camp Bastion. And when we'd get detainees brought in, we would get involved and called in within the first 24 hours to go and look at their teeth. And the main reason for that is just to kind of help out with estimating how old they were, because a lot of them would say that they were only children and therefore they couldn't be legally held. They weren't daft. However, I would say, well, they've got the wisdom teeth fully through. They've got loads of tooth wear. They've got a beard. I suspect that they're an adult. But I would never legally say that is the case, but they would use my evidence along with other evidence to then detain that person or not. Finally, I'm just going to talk about a bit of hearts and minds we did. And we did this with the doctors and also a vet. So we actually went out with the Special Forces Support Group, who are paras, and they looked after us out there. I felt very well looked after. And this was driving out the gates of Bastion, which was a little bit scary the first time. And this was, again, the first trip where my practice manager's wheel fell off the car in the middle of the desert, which is not what you want. And then this is just a little picture driving across Highway 1 in Afghanistan, which was a slightly dodgy road at the time. But I really never felt particularly in danger because the soldiers that we have are just absolutely amazing, and they looked after us really, really well. We actually went out to the Special Forces base out there and worked with the Afghan Territorial Force, which are kind of very highly trained Afghan soldiers. And it was them that would take us out because the local Afghans are much more likely to to be receptive to them than they would if we just turned up by ourselves. So this was the kind of vehicles that they drove around in. So they were really, really cool guys, actually. And this just shows us, you can see a village up in the distance, and this is us mustering up, and we would be kept safe away from that. And then these guys would just power on ahead and have a chat with the village elders, and the elders would say, yes, please come and give us some dental and medical care and do some vaccinations for animals and things. Or they would say, nah, we're not interested because we quite like the Taliban because they give us lots of money, which used to happen as well. So, you know, it was probably 50-50 of how popular we were. This is just driving through one of those villages. It's an absolutely incredible place. I've never seen poverty quite like it. You know, I've been around Kenya and things, and this was just the next level. It's just basically mud huts. This is a bunch of the village elders chatting away, and on this occasion, we've been allowed in. These are my interpreters, so really hilarious guys there pointing the loaded AK. But they were absolutely brilliant, and they certainly got the local population on side. And this is the kind of setup that we had. So I was being a ginger, had to have some shade, and very basic dentistry out there because my fillings would set before they'd mixed because it was over 50 degrees. We had not very good cross-infection control because we had no surfaces to work off. So it was basically just extractions that I did with a few temporary fillings. Terrible picture, really blurred, but this is a chap this is the first guy I treated, and he banged his head coming out to see what was going on. And so I sutured his head, and he loved it, and then wanted some teeth out. So I took some teeth out, and then he went and told his mates, and it just kind of went from there. And we did go back to this village actually another 2 times. And every time we went, we got more and more people as the word spread to say, this guy can take teeth out painlessly. I would become quite popular. It was really, really good. You see some amazing things. So those teeth have basically fallen out, actually. And if you wiggled one, they all wiggled because they were all joined together with tartar. Even treated some kids out there. So this is not a technique that I would use in the UK, but for them, fine. Just cover his eyes up. And then we were still friends afterwards. It was fine. So just a final thing that I did a little bit of doggy dentistry. So the military dogs are absolutely amazing. They actually let me dress up and be a victim at one point. Well, I absolutely had the last laugh because he actually broke a canine, which I then very kindly removed. And I learned that dogs have very large canines. And so you have to remove them surgically, where you lift a flap of the gum up and you drill away some bone, and you have to take the root out that way. But he lived, and he lived to bite another day. He was all right. So another little thing about the military was I had loads of opportunities for adventure training. So went on some safaris when I was out in Kenya, did some mountain biking, canyoning, rock climbing, was really, really good. This was just last year, actually. I went and did the GR20 out in Corsica, all for the princely sum of £75, flights and accommodation. So in the military, I think, we worked really, really, really hard, but then I think we were rewarded for that by getting these kinds of opportunities. Got to meet some awesome people. Freddie Flintoff there. So he actually spent about half an hour in the dental department. He was absolutely brilliant. It's nice to see him doing well on Top Gear, actually. And then I've come full circle because I left the military last year. And I've come back to Newcastle, and I'm now doing specialist training in endodontics, which is root canal fillings. So I've took a picture now of what is my view nowadays, and this is exactly the same window and exactly the same angle, and that is what it's become, which makes me feel really old. However, I'd say if anyone's thinking of coming to Newcastle, it's really, really nice now. That horrible accommodation has gone. and it's really modern and nice. And the medical and dental school are really, really well respected. They always rank very highly, quite often coming top of the rankings. And I think it's a very friendly place to come. So I do the interviews for the potential students, and what we're looking for is mainly communication skills. So a lot of places have moved to, I'm sure you know, but it's almost like speed dating, where you go around and have lots of little interviews, but we don't. We just sit down and chat to people. And to be honest, if you can communicate, and the question that we're asking ourselves is, would we want to teach this person on the clinics? Would they make a good dentist? Can they communicate with patients? Because communication is everything. And so our philosophy at Newcastle is different from every other dental school pretty much. So I hope that if any of you do come, you'll have the same experience that I had and the experience that I've had on returning. So that is the end of my talk, and I'd be more than happy for any questions. Hello, Laura.
Hi.
I'll put my little camera on now if I can figure out how.
That would be great.
Oh, there we go.
There he is. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Really interesting. We have had a lot of questions come through. I think everyone's found it a very interesting topic. So what I'll do is I'll start and just ask a few of them. I'm going to group a few into themes because we've had some repetition. But the first one is that a student has just recently completed his AOSB for the Army. And he's wanting to know if you went to Sandhurst. And sorry, my question has just disappeared. That's not very good. Technical glitch. And did your course differ from the 44-week course?
Massively. Yeah. Our focus whilst we're at Sandhurst is just basic military skills. So you do, I think I went out on 3 exercises. The longest one was a week long, living in the field. And so we have to learn all the basic military skills. And I thought I'd never use them. But then when I got to out to Afghanistan, I needed to know how to look after my rifle. There were plans for if it all went wrong, we'd do military moves basically to get out. So you had to be able to look after yourself. So it is really important to know the basic military stuff, but I was never going to command a regiment. I was never going to have to lead 30 men on the battlefield. It just would never. It's not. We're governed by the Geneva Convention, so we're non-combatants. So basically, if our patients or our lives are threatened, then we're legally allowed to defend ourselves. So if when I was out doing my clinics, we started getting shot at, I absolutely can fire back. But I couldn't go on an offensive operation. I couldn't go out on a patrol and then go and look for the Taliban and try and engage with them, because that's definitely not the Geneva Convention. So yeah, in a nutshell, it was a lot of long days, not a lot of sleep, and it wasn't brilliant. But it wasn't like the 44-week course. It wasn't too bad.
There's a lot of questions as well asking about the fitness aspect and if that was important for you as well, if you needed to be fit.
You do. I mean, yeah, you do. So you have to have a fitness test every year, and they've just changed it actually to be more functional, but it's a similar standard. So you have to do sort of 50-ish sit-ups, 50-ish press-ups within 2 minutes. And you then have to do like a half-a-mile warm-up run. And you then have to do 1.5 miles in 10.5 minutes, which is quite fast, actually. So, well, it's 7-minute miles. So I used to be about an 8.5-minute man, but I've recently started training again. And I'm struggling to get sub 10, which is terrible. But I'm getting old now, So that's the level you need to be at. When I went to Sandhurst, I was like a 9-minute kind of guy. So, but I actually probably lost fitness when I was there because they don't push you that hard. It's only personal pride that made you get above the required standards. So if you can run a 7-minute mile, you're okay. So yeah, you do have to be fit.
Perfect, thank you. And somebody is asking what the key qualities are to be an army medic or an army dentist.
So you can look up really the qualities of being an army officer. So it's about like discipline, loyalty, respect for others. You can basically Google that and just look up the qualities of an army officer, or the qualities of the British military. So you have to go through. You've mentioned AOSB, so it's Army Officer Selection Board, and you have to be accepted into the military as an officer before you are accepted as a dentist, because you are an officer first and a dentist second, actually. So you have to meet those qualities, and it's basically a couple of days that you go away and you do various command tasks where you have to solve problems, you have to do debating, presentations, and they'll look at you and decide if you could be an army officer or not. What I would say is, if anyone's interested when they come to uni, you should join the University Officer Training Corps, because you'll start to pick up on all those qualities and you'll pick up some military skills. And then when you get to second year, you can apply. And then from third year onwards, there's like a bursary scheme where you get, I think it's £10,000 a year for 3 years, which is tax-free. But then when you qualify and once you've completed Sandhurst, I think it's around the £45,000 mark. It's like absolutely amazing. I didn't do that. I should have done that. So if anyone's I don't, and also to do University Officer Training Corps, you actually get paid. So you can go away for a weekend. You don't pay for travel or accommodation. You might go mountaineering for the weekend and you're getting paid to do it. So I actually would, if anyone's even thinking about it, go and do that for a year. And if you decide it's not for you, fine. But if it is for you, that will stand you in good stead for your AOSB.
Brilliant, thank you. Some people have asked as well what the longest period of time you were away from home and how you coped with that.
The tours are 7 months, but you did get 2 weeks in the middle for R&R, so they flew you back for 2 weeks. So I was all right, actually. I'd probably struggle now because I've got kids, and I think this is the thing, is like, I'm not sure a long-term career in the army is for everyone, because what I've not mentioned is you have to move every 2 to 3 years. So I did five postings in 12 years, and every time, like, if you have kids, you've got to start a new school, you've got to move house, you've got to start a new job. So it kind of gets a bit draining, and it was kind of one of the reasons really that I left, because with kids and things, it just gets really hard. But I think for a short service commission, like if you don't take the bursary, it's 3 years that you have to join for. And if you do take it, it's 7 years. And actually, when you're young, I mean, what a wonderful experience. And it's a really good grounding in dentistry. Medicine is a bit different because you have to take 2 years as a general duties medical officer. So you'll join and you'll do your 2 years FD, and then you have to do kind of 2 years as a general duties medical officer, and then you go into specialist training. So I think as a doctor, I'd think carefully, because it does kind of slow your training down a little bit, but it opens up other opportunities up as well. I think as a dentist, it's a no-brainer, because our foundation dentistry scheme it's not based on financial aspects at all. You can just learn to do dentistry in the best way possible, and it's a really supportive environment. Like, all of our trainers were really competent. So I just think for dentists, if you join for 3 years, you literally cannot go wrong. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, I've got a baby in the background, that's why I keep muted. Another question, well, there's two sides to this. What was your favourite thing about being a military dentist? And also, what is one of the worst things that you had to deal with? Positive and negative.
Oh no, so I think the best thing, well, I think the tours in Afghanistan were the best, because they've given me an experience that like very few people get, and I feel quite privileged. I've had, you know, as a dentist, I've done some really amazing things for people that you don't normally get to do. But I think that's also the worst, because I saw a lot of young men in terrible states. I saw a lot of people die, and again, as a dentist, it's not really something that you're prepared for. So, I mean, it really affected me. I mean, my boss came out for a kind of a quality assurance visit, and he came out for 4 days, and he got back. He had to have the rest of the week off work because he was just so upset to see these 20, 21-year-olds just lives ruined. It just was harrowing. So yeah, I think that was really sad, but also really rewarding. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I like the honesty. It's good. Another question is about resource. So if the power was to go off through the night, for example, like how would you deal with that? Did you have enough resource to be able to do what you needed to do?
Yeah, we had generators. So the hospital would be like, absolutely would never lose power because it had backup generators and everything. Out on the front line type, well, not, I wasn't on the front line, I was in the forward bases. Power was a bit of an issue. Like if you hook up to a generator, what we learned was if you turn the sterilizer on, it blows everything. The generators are not powerful enough to power the sterilizer and things. It's a bit like boiling a kettle, but a bit more. So it was an issue. And what we learned to do was just to take bags of kit. So we got loads of extra stuff shipped over from the UK, and I would just take like, you know, literally like 100 forceps and 100 local anesthetic cartridges and loads of stuff, so I could just do loads of dentistry, disinfect it in a solution, and then just put it in boxes and just bring it back again. And then when I got back to the main camp, the main hospital, I would just sterilize everything at that point. And the other thing we always worked with head torches and stuff because the lighting was really bad, and that's all battery and stuff. So yeah, it was. I just stripped things back, keep it simple.
Perfect. A student is asking if you worked with many females in the military.
Yes, I mean, I'd say much as dentistry is and medicine, I think it's more females now than males that go to medical and dental school. Is that right, Laura? I mean, that's kind of how it looks on the intake.
Yeah.
And that's kind of having a follow-on effect to medical and dental profession in the military. So, you know, half of the dentists, or in fact, the majority of the younger dentists that are coming in are female. The majority of the dental nurses were female, although a lot more male dental nurses than you get in civilian life. And then, yeah, military soldiers, it depends where you are. When I was in Northern Ireland, I was with I had an infantry regiment and a logistics regiment. Infantry had I had one female who was the admin officer out of 700. So, wow. And then the logistics wasn't much better. But then I've also been posted in a medical regiment, and the medical regiment was probably maybe a 25% female to 75% male split. So I think it's just, yeah, different jobs.
Yeah.
But there are more and more females in the army, and there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about the females on the front line, whether they should be in the infantry. There's, I think we've had successful females going through the P company, para training, and I'm sure that we'll get them in the special forces as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's becoming a lot better, I think, than it used to be.
Yeah. And someone's asking if you were set on this career for a long time, or what made you decide to go down this route?
For what made me go down the military route?
I think they're actually focusing on dentistry.
Oh yeah, well, like I say, do your research, because I wasn't sure whether I should have done medicine or dentistry, and I still think maybe I should have done medicine. I love my teeth, but I think although there are career opportunities, I think there's less opportunities than there are in medicine. Probably get in trouble for saying that, but I'd say most dentists end up in primary care, whereas I think in medicine, I don't want to say it's easier to specialize and go into secondary care, but in dentistry, there are like, I had to go through national selection last year, and I think there were over 1,000 applicants. We got shortlisted down to 60, and there were 5 jobs. So it's not, yes, the opportunities are there, but I don't think it's not necessarily easy to take these opportunities in dentistry. So medicine maybe gives a bit more for career development, I'm not sure. But dentistry, if you are going onto the high street to practice, which a lot of people do, it's the financial side of it I don't like. Now, my friends love it, and they're driving really nice. I've got a Vauxhall Insignia. They have Porsches and things, and they are basically businessmen, and they absolutely love the business side, and they have a real vested interest in it, and it makes them work hard, and they're growing a business, and they're doing really well, and they're enjoying it. And I hated that. I just hated having that discussion with patients. So dentistry is a business essentially, and almost a business ahead of providing healthcare in primary care, almost, because if a patient can't afford it, they can't afford it. So it's I don't know. I don't like that, but my mates love it. So it's just whatever, do your research.
Yeah.
Do your research. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever works for you. Perfect. Yeah. And did it take much for you to kind of get used to civilian life after you'd been in the army?
It did, because I was in for 12 years. So it did. And I know one of my friends is a dentist. He had a really hard time. He actually had to get some counselling done. I shouldn't laugh. But he basically, if you knew him, he's the most laid back guy ever. And it's unbelievable that he would have issues. But he got told that he had like readjustment syndrome. And you do go from having everything done for you, and you're so comfortable in your job, and then overnight, it's just completely different. And that's my experience in the dental world. For these guys that are coming out of the infantry, it must be horrendous, because they're literally leaving everything they've ever known. They've probably been in for 24 years, and then just overnight it's totally different. So I probably took a few months to adjust, but I think some people take a lot longer. My plan was to join for 3 years, but I just absolutely loved it. And I kept signing on for longer and longer, but I wanted to specialize, and family issues as well. So had to call it a day, but it was brilliant. Yeah.
Somebody's asking if you could ever see yourself going back in, and if so, why? Or if you can.
Well, I wouldn't join the regulars again for family reasons, but I would probably work for them as a civilian, because I just think it's a great organization to be part of. And I have joined the reserves, actually, so I'm still in the military technically. And the reason I've done that is because it has all the best bits. So I still get to go on exercise, and I still get to do adventure training, and I still have that military ethos. Like, I didn't go for 3 months, and then I walked into the building in my military kit, and I just felt like I was coming home again. It was really nice. So I'm still technically kind of in the military, and I'll probably keep that going as long as I can, because I do love it.
Perfect. I'm just having a little look through the rest of these questions. The question here is actually just asking when you decided to go into dentistry itself. So did you know I know you said you couldn't decide between medicine and dentistry to begin with.
Yeah, so what I did was, I think I was about 15, and I did some work, it's maybe 16, I did some work experience in the Derby Royal Infirmary, which doesn't exist now. And I remember seeing this young house officer, and he had to basically tell someone that their family member had died or was going to die. I thought, I'm not into that. Like, I just thought that's like intense. I don't know how you go home at night and sleep. So I just thought, actually, medicine is just too much responsibility. Yeah. I thought, okay, dentistry it is. And I just did loads of work experience, and I would just encourage everyone to do the same. So just make sure you know what you're getting into. So yeah, just really, you have to decide so young. And as I say, I didn't really know what dentistry was, and I do absolutely love it, actually. But just don't forget that there is a financial component to it when you come out the other end, that you basically will end up either working for someone in a business and therefore have to apply their business model, or you'll end up setting up your own business. And I would say that 95% of dentists absolutely love that. And then there's just a few of us that just we're not bothered about money. We'll keep the Vauxhall, it's fine. So yeah.
Brilliant. And do you think that your time in the military has provided you with any unique skills that you can now utilize in your job?
I think so. I mean, I'm certainly no Jason Bourne. What I would say is, like when the COVID crisis happened, I basically had to give up my specialist training and just do 5 days a week on the emergency clinic. And that felt just like being on tour, because the rule book got torn up for dentistry, you know. So we were very against antibiotics. We didn't like taking teeth out because we tried to save everything. Well, and it all totally changed. And then I think I adapted like overnight. People actually said, you know, wow, you're just cracking on with it. And it was just like second nature to just, you're faced with a situation, you just deal with it. I was faced with far worse when I was out in Afghanistan. So it was just, I think adapting to things, definitely that's probably what I've become good at. And it's probably something I wasn't good at before. So yeah, I think it's made me quite a resilient dentist who can just think outside the box, and also probably look at the bigger picture as well, take a step back and think, okay, you've been referred in for a root canal treatment, but what else is going on in the mouth? What is in your best interests? And just really treatment planning for the patient. So just taking a step back and thinking what is best for them.
Perfect. I think we'll make this the last question, because I can see that it's 2 minutes to 7. So a question here about suggestions for extracurricular activity for people to take part in to prepare themselves. This is actually specifically for medical corps, but I think it could be for anything to do with wanting to go on to higher education.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the stage of applying to medical or dental school, I think one thing that everyone's done, and if you haven't, it might not look good, is some kind of volunteering. So a lot of people do Duke of Edinburgh, and that's a really good thing to do because it ticks loads of boxes. Because you can talk about maybe how we may ask you if you've ever had to deal with a difficult situation, and if you've done some kind of volunteering, then you've probably been in a work environment and you might have had to deal with a difficult situation. We might ask you if you've ever had to organize anything. So again, maybe as you've organized some kind of little week-long mountaineering expedition, anything that you can talk about like that develops you as a person. And they're all transferable to the military, of course. And then, yeah, the volunteering thing. So a lot of people volunteer in like charity shops or care homes, or I'm on the fence. I had a young lad turn around to me and say, I didn't do any volunteering because I had to work and I've had to save up money. I think that's brilliant. And he's developing his skills by doing a job. I mean, I used to work in W.H. Smith's for 3 years, and it was great. And I think you have to do stuff outside of school. Every now and then we get an applicant who comes in and literally all they do is schoolwork and there's nothing about them. So it's just, how can you develop yourself as a person and do some interesting things that you can talk about in interview, I think. And then definitely as an undergraduate, you want to really make the most of your elective. Like I did forensics. What some people, they'll do a project that they go on to publish in a medical journal, which I think is a really good idea. And then you can take a year out where you can do an intercalated degree, and you can do research projects whilst you're there. They're all things to add to your CV, and they all transfer to the military as well. And then with the military stuff, you're just looking at, can you tick those boxes for like the core values of the British Army? So if you just kind of Google that and think that is what the military is looking for, and make yourself into that person.
Brilliant. Right, there's definitely a lot of questions we haven't got through, but we'll call that a night. Thank you very much, David. That was such a interesting talk, and it's really nice to see lots of photographs of what you've been through and done. So we'll end that there, and we'll see everybody the same time next week. Thank you very much, David.
What I'll say though, by the way,
Yeah.
is I don't mind people dropping me an email actually.
Okay.
If they do want a bit more information about dentistry as a career, or any information about the military. So if people have a pen ready, so it's quite an easy one. It's just my name. So it's david.edwards. And then it's just at newcastle.ac.uk. I should have put it up on the screen. It's my bad skills, that is. But so it's david.edwards at newcastle.ac.uk. And I don't mind at all if people drop me an email.
We can always, as well, if people want to send the emails to Mini Medical School, and then we can pass them on, just so that we're not sharing too much information. So we can pass details on as well to everybody, and we'll make sure that questions get sent through to you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Lovely. Bye, everyone.